All right, welcome back from your working lunch. I'm not Captain DePalmer, I'm Captain Trevor Weber, and I'll be your instructor for this lesson on R&O Overview. So before we start, there was a really good question right at the beginning, right at the course introduction that I found as a valuable discussion point. So before we get started, Captain Jordan asked, what is requirements? What is optimization? What is it? So I'm going to ask someone that's not in R&O, perhaps someone from the shop. I know we have some electricians that are pulled from the shop for this course. Anybody that's outside of the shop, please answer what is requirements and optimization. Maybe you'll make my lesson a lot shorter and easier. And I do know quite a few people in this class from previous assignments. So yeah, I might call out on you if I get a bunch of silent stares from the audience. Still got 59.5 minutes of my lesson, so we'll just hang out until someone wants to define in their own words what is requirements and optimization. Sergeant Watrous gave you a pretty good textbook answer at the beginning of this class, but let's see. Thank you, Sergeant Sankey. You were one of the people I would have called on. So glad you typed that in. Someone want to open their mic and answer the question?
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing? Sergeant Johnson, Cannon Air Force Base.
Hello.
Electrical background. Requirements and optimization is pretty much, to my understanding, is pretty much we want to optimize our requirements, making them last as long as possible. Yes,
cool.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, no, for sure. What Captain Jordan was asking too is requirements just someone answering a phone call receiving requirements? And what do you think about that question? What do you think? Do you think that's true or not true?
Which question was that, sir?
Yeah, and anyone can answer it, but if you're willing to answer, is requirements just answering a phone call, getting next-gen service requests, and that's requirements?
No, sir.
What else could be a requirement? Where else could we?
Again, my own words, our infrastructure.
Yeah, we can identify them on our own.
Yes.
Maybe you're an electrician, maybe you're doing preventive maintenance.
Yes.
What are you seeing that might pop up? Maybe you see some, an obvious example would be sparks, but maybe you identify that you've got flickering lights, or you've got, you're doing PM, perhaps power production, you're doing PM on a generator, preventive maintenance on a generator. And you identify not a generator issue, but you see a requirement that there's this tree that's about to fall over and smack on a building. That's identifying a requirement, not even in your wheel well of things that you need to do. Let's see what else is it. Yeah, good job, Sergeant Johnson. Thanks for getting the conversation going. Another answer was using resources correctly and putting them where needed, as well as getting rid of things not needed, making existing things last. Yeah, thanks, Airman Potter. You pop in the mic, which of the two it is, in case I want to call on you later. Yeah, that's a very good answer. Things that maybe we don't even know about, and then things that already exist that we do know about. Because perhaps you're an engineer in this class and you're a GS-12, 13 or something like that, and you're programming. Maybe while you're doing your assessments, analysis of builder, you identify that there's a massive correlation of HVAC issues in this one area of the base. Maybe the entire base distribution process is a limiting factor. Maybe it's a steam plant problem. Being able to identify those big picture requirements, because anyone could go into a room and say that light bulb is out and identify that requirement. How can you think smarter? So again, I'm going to ask one more question and then we'll get going. Someone outside of the R&O section, what does requirements and optimization do for you? So if you were in the shop, again, non-attribution, what does R&O do for you?
They determine if certain jobs are in shop scope or outside of shop scope, see if contractors need to be brought in.
Cool. And do they do a good job at that or not? And from your personal experience, not blanket statement.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Good political answer. I like it. I see a no from Lieutenant Miller. That's awesome. That's a good go-do to get your shop fixing, going on improving. Yeah, what else? What else does R&O do for you? Maybe you are in R&O. I'll open the floor for that too. If you're in R&O, what do you do for the, not just the shops, but what do you do for engineering? What do you do for installation management, even the fire department or emergency management? What do you do? And I'll try and keep my eye on the chat as we go. Yeah, feed projects into the 5-year plan. That's a great one. Preventive maintenance.
Hi,
Hi.
this is Ashton McLaughlin from Dover Air Force Base. I think
Oh.
one of the things that has come to me is at Dover, there's never really been a civil engineer with my experience in terms of transportation. So not only am I running the AMP program for TNAP, doing a lot of design reviews,
Okay.
you know, providing my input on that. So for me, it's beneficial because now I know what is going on in terms of my asset, but I'm also, hey, these are the requirements. This is what you need to do on your
Awesome.
project.
Yeah, thanks, Ashton. Where do you work? Like what position?
I'm the TNAP, I'm the AMP manager.
Are you
So
in ops flight, engineering flight?
I'm in the ops flight.
Cool. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So yeah, you have. I like the TNAP activity because it's a very good representation of something that can not easily be tackled, but it's very clear. You know, it's definitive. It's no pun. You know, it's a solid ground to stand on to determine a 5-year plan. Right. When you're talking facilities, you got things exploding and popping all over the place, but you look at pavement and you can get a real concrete understanding of what the issue is.
No pun intended.
Yeah, no, that's good feedback. And R&O is that collection point, right? They should be the smartest people in your squadron. A lot of people think, oh, we're going to send, you know, airmen, A1C or senior airmen to do facility condition assessments. Anyone can do an FCA. That's not their job. Their job is to identify requirements and optimize the limited resources we have. Outside of money, what other resources are limited?
Manpower.
Manpower, absolutely. What else we got? Time, that's a huge one. And a lot of people think time in the shops to get work done. That's not the only LIMFAC. Time to work into Builder, time to do next gen. If you're in engineering flight, time to do programming. Am I gonna send, as the R&O section, the one that should be the nucleus of the squadron, should I send all 15 facility HVAC mechanical projects to engineering at the same time? No, we should be able to determine what's the most important. All right, I'm going to send that so they can handle, that programmer has the time to accomplish that requirement and then hand over the next. Sounds very simple from my side of the table up here at AFIT. I know it's a much more challenging piece than that. You have a lot more variability at the bases, but that's just some things to think about. Is R&O is not just this, you know, customer service phone center. If you're still answering phones and you're in the R&O section, good on you. But does anyone want to type in the chat which service request should we accept over the phone, or even use your mic? Priority. I'm thinking priority service request. Emergencies only. Absolutely. So at Yokota Air Base, that's where I came from before this assignment. We actually decided our work managers, not customer service. If you were a 3E6 and you work in R&O, you are not just customer service. Everyone in CE is customer service. You are a work manager, you're a controller, you are a scheduler, you're an optimizer, lots of different titles, okay? At Yokota, we determined, let's not have us answering phone calls all the time because we have more important things to do with our time. Another one of those limited resources. So we created a phone tree. Hello, welcome to the 374 Civil Engineer Squadron. If you have an emergency, please, you know, stay on the line. Otherwise, if you have just a regular service request, talk to your facility manager. That's the process, okay? It gave our team, and Lieutenant Rochester's still there, it gave our, I don't know if we're still using it, but it gave our team the opportunity to focus on the important stuff. But yeah, Jason from Malmstrom, I think. Could be Malmstrom, mine, not another M, but we are R&O also determining which taskings can be handled at the shops, and that those that need to be sent up as a medium or major project to engineering or MAGCOM. Yes. And depending on what you recommend and determine and send to the work request or review board, that's going to be another limiting factor on execution. So we actually have a lesson later on this week on different execution methods, because at the end of the day, you are not just a facilitator, you're a decision maker. And if you make that correct decision up front, then we don't have to backtrack and get that right answer. So definitely takes an entire team, takes 3 E6s, takes engineers, takes technicians from the shop, takes a CGO to not only lead and manage, but understand and learn, because eventually we're going to be at that major level, that 05 level, leading this process. And if you're not using asset management principles, if you're not understanding the importance of the requirements and optimization section, you're wasting a resource that could be extremely valuable. Let me just scroll through real quick in case someone had a question, and then we'll get in to our lesson. Big permits collect data for building ratings. Okay. You want to expand on that, Sergeant Fresno? If not, no big deal. Don't worry about typing in an essay. If you don't have a mic, then just we'll press. So cool. Last one is Captain Jordan said, people say the work management section is requirements and amps and sub-amps are optimization. Yeah, let's as a group, we'll just make a blanket decision that that's not the answer we're going to press on with. Everyone is doing optimization. Installation management has a role in optimization. They are not in the R&O section, but they're doing optimization. We should all be thinking about how to save so we can spend later on, because obviously us and the government understand that if you don't spend the money at the end of the year, someone else will. So that's not the solution, is to hold all the money, but let's see how we can save, because there's more projects than we're ever going to have funds available. Cool. So yeah, as I mentioned, I didn't really do an introduction yet. I'm Captain Trevor Weber. I'm an instructor here at AFIT, teach some of the asset management courses. My background, I got my undergrad at University of Portland, received my commission there in 2013. Got my first assignment at Joint Base Langley Eustis. Know a couple of you from there. And I started out in installation management, understood the importance of that relationship with R&O and installation management. And then I got to work in the R&O section at end of year, which if you've ever been involved in that and dealing with pop-up facility condition assessments and, hey, we need this assessment so we can fix our score for the B camp. You can feel my pain, you can sympathize with me. And then I deployed to Joint Task Force Guantanamo Bay, and I was the operations flight commander there for 24 engineers and 1 loggie. And our job was not only boss contract support, but we were the oh crap team. So Gitmo was a crystal ball, and if anything went wrong, then we were there to fix it. Then I worked as an exec, PCS to Yokota Air Base. Started out in the operations engineering as chief of ops engineering, and spent a year there, then moved over to emergency management just to get pulled back about 5 months later as the operations flight commander. I was an interim flight commander for 8 months, about maybe 7 or 8 months, and never lowered my expectations on what I wanted from the R&O section. That's a vital. I mentioned the nucleus. Put that on your OPR, your EPR. I was ops engineering chief, the nucleus of the squadron. Maybe you'll have to put some actually stats in there, but great buzzwords. So we're gonna jump into it. These are the lesson objectives for this hour block. I've already wasted a quarter of that. But the lesson objectives: understand how CEOR supports asset management. We've kind of talked about that conceptually. Then what is their role in work management? So asset management, work management. And then finally is this asset visibility piece. So we're making decisions based off of the data that we have available. Let's make good decisions, which starts you have to start with good data. We'll kind of dive into that. You're going to see a lot of this diagram throughout the week. And because at the end of the day, this is what the CE squadron should be leaning towards, should be focusing on, is those foundational pillars, and how we in R&O, or you in R&O, or you in the engineering flight can harness those pillars and use these principles to make sound asset management decisions and leadership decisions at the end of the day. So Captain DePalmer did a really good overview of what all of these are. And basically the whole point of asset management is to answer these 4 questions. Obviously, this is probably going to be valuable for your final exam if we're bringing it up this many times. But at the end of the day, we're answering these 4 questions. And if you are ever stuck in a pickle of, what's my role, what's my purpose in the Guard, in the Reserve, as a homeowner, as a spouse, any relationship, you can answer these 4 questions and maybe kind of fix this last question. And that's a good process, just a good practice to kind of see what's valuable and what you should invest your time, your money, your manpower in. But for R&O specifically, what do you have, what condition, how important, and what are you going to do about it? So the R&O section should be answering all these questions to ultimately determine that best place to spend our time and money. The R&O has not been around forever. I know Master Sergeant Watrous, it hasn't even been around for his entire career. It started in 2012 as we had this massive CE transformation. So the PAD 1203 came out and was talking about how are we going to rethink, how are we going to implement asset management, not as a flight, because if you've been in this Air Force for quite some time, CEA used to be a flight, but how can we create it as a standard? How can we ingrain it into all of the flights, all of the leadership? And there was a plan, the P plan was produced, and it gave us the beginnings of the process. It didn't give us the final solution. We're still waiting on a final solution on what's the best way to do this. But the difficulty with asset management is it's not an end result. We're never gonna be at the end of this journey. It's a process. So if you're new to this section, I know a couple of you just joined the Air Force or just joined R&O. Look at these P plans. They should be on your resources page. Look through them, see what your roles are, and that'll be a foundational kind of level of understanding for asset management. Does anyone have any questions so far? Cool. I got a softball question here. What flight is R&O section in? I want to get people involved in the chat, so I'm just going to keep throwing questions out. Ops, CEO. Thank you. Yes, and this is kind of the breakdown. So the R&O section, a lot of people think, man, why don't we just put R&O in right under the squadron commander or something? It's controlling all of those different flights and what they're doing. The reason is because we want to put the power on the major in charge of operations. They should not be in charge of only emergencies. They want to focus on everything under the sun when it comes to requirements. We're putting a lot of responsibility on the superintendents and the officer in charge of that ops flight. So this is pulled from the AFI 32-1001, as well as the P plan defining where R&O sits. And this is the manning that is allocated based off the ops engineering playbook. Does anyone have anything missing from this in their flight or element? I'll be patient. No lead engineer. Yeah, maybe you have utilities mechanical and facilities mechanical. That could be one position. But EAs, does anyone know why EAs belong in R&O? Just one position for a GIS logger. They make pretty maps. Yes, that's part of their job. Asset visibility. Updating as-built with FCA. Yeah, absolutely. And then there's some inherent reasons as well. They know that engineering flight kind of process. They can understand how warranties work. They can understand how requirements need to look on the larger scale project side. So on top of just the asset visibility, thank you for that asset management buzzword. On top of that, determining how to integrate things. They're a great asset. They're also a great asset when it comes to understanding, portraying data from an Excel spreadsheet into something that's a little more creative, like a map. So the reason I have this slide up is this is an advocacy tool. If you're not getting the support from your engineering flight and you need a utilities mechanical or you need a facilities or a TNAP activity manager, show this to your boss. Say, hey, this is what we're supposed to be doing. We have half of this. What's the deal? One thing that's not on this is the people we pull from the shops. The technicians that we pull for condition assessments to do the planning, maybe to prepare assessments, doing analysis to see what needs to hit the work request review board or not. That's still not manning that we're not receiving from R&O. So another foot stomp is get your best and brightest because they have a huge impact on the long-term benefits of the base. How many degreed engineers are supposed to be in this element? So you're gonna have to look at your manning document for that specific answer. Every base has its isms. I know that's a political answer, but yeah, so those sub-activity managers, typically they're GS 12 positions with degreed engineers, as well as the activity manager positions. But I know we have one activity manager in here, so if you want to type in the chat, by all means, yeah. And missing positions because you're not receiving applicants, absolutely. I talk activity management next week, and we'll talk some work, or tomorrow, not next week. We'll talk some workarounds for that. So this is the manning of what you should be receiving in your R&O section. And you have a huge mission, okay? So you have this massive mission of what you should be doing, ensuring that optimal resource decision, data-driven investments, proactive systems, interface with customers, life cycle planning. Only one of these is, that customer service work, phone call receiving, right? That number 4 down there. We spend a lot of time on that. We really need to focus on these other 4. And then on top of that, kind of a deeper dive is being proactive, focusing on that system performance analysis. So that ICS that's mentioned in the chat, that's a control system, industrial control system. So that's amazing. I wish every base had it. Unfortunately, it's still getting rolled out. But basically, think of a server room, computer room with all of these different sensors. Anytime the HVAC goes above 78 degrees or whatever they set it at, it's going to flag an alarm. So we don't need to wait for the customer to say, hey, my HVAC's not working. We can be proactive and say, okay, let's send a team out there.
In this case, they're particularly talking about this.
Okay, so that's the security piece as well. Okay, and so the security piece person sits within R&O, but that's the ICS.
ICS would fall under the infrastructure.
Okay, yeah, so that's the security piece, because as you can tell, or as you've seen from the news, hackers are out there, and so how can we control that? So that's the ICS position within within our ops engineering R&O, that's the duty title. If you don't have ICS at your base, chances are they're doing something different and along those lines. So this is kind of the same stuff as that first slide, but that last one right here, if you're looking at the asset management pillars and principles, what is that? What would you answer as that is a definition of one of the pillars or principles? Which one? So we got data, communication, leadership, risk, visibility, life cycle. It's the communication piece. I'll give you the answer on that one. So how can you in R&O, thank you. Thanks, Lieutenant Shannon. So how can you in R&O be the person that's going to bridge that gap? Chances are that relationship's not going to be a, a 30-30-30 split. Maybe you have to be more proactive and come to their place of work. But how can you bridge that gap? Because it's going to make your job that much easier. So that's kind of the mission. The way we've consolidated the mission within the Ops Engineer playbook is 5 basic processes, okay? So these are the 5 basic processes we talked. I asked, what does R&O do at the beginning of this lesson? And a lot of your answers were kind of along the lines of this stuff. Identifying requirements and prioritization. Is anyone at the point where their base is identifying requirements from builder? Or doing analysis within NextGen saying, hey, we've been at this building for however many times. Cool. Yeah, thanks, Ashton. TNAP doesn't use Builder, that's correct. And then Paver is not always the most current because they do assessments every 5 years. I wish, yeah, absolutely. But my question, my return back to you is why not? Why not come up with a plan? Anyone heard of Tableau? Just type yes in the chat if you have. Yes. Anyone heard of the business process library? Yes. Cool. We got a yes. There are tools out there to tell you how to use your data to make decisions. Okay. And to identify requirements. That's number 1. Number 2 is preventive maintenance, corrective maintenance, supporting that contract execution. That's where that EA, as well as the technicians from the different shops can support. And then finally is the process management and issues management, which we'll talk through. Want to hear more about Tableau? Okay, I hashed out some time tomorrow in my activity management lesson to give you a demo if all things work technology-wise. Tableau is amazing. Yes, COM limits access to the most useful software. Definitely agree. But that's a hurdle that's not going to change quickly. How do you overcome that obstacle? So what can you change? Focus on the things that you can change, not the things that you can't. Yeah, go through there. So we'll go through pretty quickly through the 5 priorities or 5 principles of the Ops Engineering Playbook, the 5 processes. Sorry, one of those P words. And we'll go through quickly, but if you have any more questions about any of this stuff, it is written real clear and succinct within that playbook. So I know someone said the link to that playbook's not working. I'll troubleshoot that at the end of this lesson, but I'm basically just summarizing that playbook for you. So it's number 1, identify and prioritize requirements. So we both have internally identified requirements as well as externally. But how can an activity manager, an engineer, a data manager, work management, ops engineering, that's our bread and butter. How can we use these different systems to analyze? And then identify different candidates for investigation. Another reason that we have people pulled from the shops in our section is because we can identify the problem, but maybe we're not the subject matter expert on electrical. So you at the shop, if you're taking this class because it's a part of your upgrade training, how can you have a good relationship with the R&O section and maybe present findings that you've identified? How do you relay those back to the R&O section? And then obviously ensuring asset visibility and doing some condition assessments. We'll talk about these 2 different terms after we talk the 5 different processes. And then, yeah, operations managers. Again, I can't hark on this enough. Your job is much more important than answering phone calls and fixing the things that get typed wrong in NextGen. That should be the base level of what you're doing and learning. So we'll jump into excuse me. So prioritizing requirements. We're going to jump into kind of how we do work prioritization. If you've been in the CE squadron for a length of time, you probably have seen priority 1 through 4. But the biggest foot stomp on this is it's not first in, first out. Okay, we've gone beyond that. Just because a service request or a work task has been in the system for 9, 10 months, years, does not mean that that should be prioritized higher than something else. We are doing prioritization based off of the importance, like Captain DePalmer talked about, that value of that asset. If you are in charge of your flight, ops update slides, and you got the quad chart, and in that bottom right, it says top 10 oldest service requests work tasks, I'd challenge you to challenge your leadership and say, why do we even care if it's the oldest thing? If it's the oldest thing and we haven't fixed it yet, maybe there's a reason. Maybe because it's not as important as the other things on our list. So prioritizing requirements, there's a whole bunch of references on that. The ops engineering playbook is a good go-to starting point. And the PM playbook just got updated, and it's a recurring update within these playbooks. So we'll talk through this. I've got a whole bunch of slides if you download the slides on different priorities and examples and what classifies them as that. One of the biggest takeaways from this slide is you see that the word scheduled and unscheduled up on the top of that drawing or figure. What this is saying is I have yet to find anyone that can schedule an emergency. Okay, emergencies happen. We can't schedule those. They're just pop-ups, but everything else we have the ability to schedule. So we're going to have a lesson on scheduling later on this week. We have the ability to schedule and prioritize our time outside of that emergency retainer and focus. And the recommendation, the playbook, quote unquote, answer is to do priority 2s before you do priority 4s, to do priority 2s over priority 3s over priority 4s. At the base level, you might be laughing and saying, yeah, that's funny, until the commander comes in and says, hey, we need to install a concrete pad for the Alpha Warrior rig at Yokota Air Base. Does anyone want to know, if you're installing a new concrete pad, what priority is that based off of this? Priority 4, yes. 4B, 4A, that's kind of up for interpretation. But yeah, so based off of that, does it support the mission? In this case, I would say no, but you may think in your position, you may think, oh, but this is a commander interest item, it should be a 3A. No, that's not correct. That's going to mess up our numbers on next gen. It's going to mess up our numbers when we're doing analysis. It's okay to accomplish a priority 4B if there is a wing commander that was assigned to that position because they have to make the tough decisions. It's okay to accomplish that priority 4B before you do some of those priority 3s. And I would argue, if you're changing that priority number so you're not freaking out AFCEC and IMSC, then you're wrong. They need to know that we can't accomplish all the priority 3s before the priority 4s. So these classifications, these prioritizations have nothing to do with emotions. These are very much cut and dry categories, with exception of the Alpha Bravo Charlie. But something to keep in mind when you're doing this work. So let's look at emergencies real quick. As mentioned, emergencies are unscheduled. Things that we're needed to sustain or support the mission, but also that life, health, and safety. So if there is imminent life, health, and safety, then we need to act on it immediately. So question, let's see what Captain Jordan said. Depend on who it's for and what it supports. Yeah, I think that's the 4A versus 4B discussion. So yeah, thanks for chatting in there. Question for you. So there is a flood in a building, pipe burst, it's 12 degrees outside. You're up at Minot, and that's probably warm for Minot, I don't know, but pipe burst, it's flooding the commander's conference room, the emergency operations center, everything's flooded. What priority is that? Priority 1, absolutely. Okay, so your team goes in and they fix that pipe, and you've got all of this carpet. It's soaked, it's nasty. You got just all this stuff going on, and it needs to be replaced. What priority is that? Priority 3, yeah, so that's no longer a priority 1. Priority 1 is an emergency that's unscheduled, that is in need of imminent, or it impacts life, health, and safety. As soon as that pipe was repaired, And again, you know, it's an example, so you could always poke holes in it. But as soon as that was repaired, there's no emergency anymore. So you have 2 separate work tasks that got to go into NextGen. Very important for logging and tracking that data later on. So I know it's an extra step in NextGen. It's easy for me to say, I'm not at the space level, but that's what we need to be doing, need to be thinking about. So that's priority 1. Priority 2, so this is preventive maintenance and plant operations. So at Yokota Air Base, we had the boiler plant, and all of those plant operations was a priority 2A. It's something that we should be scheduling as the top priority. As soon as that plant goes down, there's no heat throughout the base. Okay. And then preventive maintenance. Do we know why preventive maintenance is priority 2 instead of lower on the list? Keep systems operational. Yeah. Why else do we hark on preventive maintenance within this asset management pipe dream? Yeah, without preventive maintenance. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if you don't use preventative maintenance, all the stuff is gonna break.
Yeah.
And if you're just trying to put out fires, then no, the whole putting oil in the car thing doesn't really work.
Yeah. And then I like what Sergeant Smitherman said, it's cheaper to fix things before it breaks. So when you're talking life cycle, like Captain DeFalmer talked about earlier, if we're talking about lowering our life cycle cost, the research, the data, not government research, but private sector, you know, even at your house, it's much easier to, you know, do this preventive maintenance before it breaks. So that's why we prioritize PM. It's very easy to just, you know, say, hey, we did our PM. And click, right? And go through the motions. But if we're really trying to attack the problem and maximize that life cycle of the asset, like Nicole said, then that's the cheapest, most of the time, solution. We don't do preventive maintenance on light bulbs, right? We wait till they go out. So it's not always a blanket statement PM, but how do you right size that preventive maintenance? So some examples of preventive maintenance, doing assessments on HVAC. Power production does preventive maintenance on generators. They typically have a really good preventive maintenance program. And the like. One thing we'll jump into that later. I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, so that's priority 2. Priority 2B, troop training projects. Does anyone know why this is priority 2? Mics are faster than typing too, so if you want to open your mic and answer, that's appreciated.
My understanding of troop training projects, and please tell me if I'm wrong or not, is that you can essentially kill 2 birds with 1 stone with those, because the maintenance, the preventative maintenance needs to be done. And the troops need to learn how to do it.
Yeah, that's a priority, like that concrete pad that I was talking about earlier. Why not turn that into a troop training project? You're going to have to do it anyway. Why not make it a training opportunity for a downrange kind of thing? So the reason this is so highly prioritized over the 3 and the 4 is our primary mission is to become battle ready to go downrange. So this is why we're prioritizing it as the 2nd most scheduled priority. Remember, foot stomp, emergencies are not scheduled. So that's the reason. And this is a pretty cool troop training project. Not sure where it is, but it seems like it's a little extreme for a troop training project. Maybe it's one of those rage rooms. I don't know. Priority 3, jumping down to corrective maintenance. Can anyone on the mic explain what corrective maintenance is?
Corrective.
Got a hot mic? Corrective maintenance, anyone want to answer it? It's literally on the slide, but I want the...
I can't read it, but I will try. Something has happened and is going to require trained personnel to come out and rectify the problem. So therefore, they would need to have been trained already. So there's manpower that's gone into that, but it just needs to get fixed. And it's not an emergency happening right now, but it could potentially get worse if you just leave it unattended. So it does have a sense of urgency. It is urgent that it gets remedied And that's basically what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, that's 100% right. So to put it in a couple words, something's broke that already existed, and we're going to fix it. The key terms is broke, existed, and that's it. So something that's broke that already existed. That's a priority 3. It's categorized into 3 sections: Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. We're going to click through, but basically when you're thinking about it, something that has a high mission impact or a high risk. So say there's a safety risk potentially attributed to it, that'll be an Alpha. And it's kind of peters down to a Charlie, which is lower mission risk. So the bowling alley is here as an example. I don't know, the plumbers might disagree with me, but that's a priority 3C. Sorry, that was a low blow. Yeah, we're gonna jump into priority 4. I know you're laughing with your mics muted. So priority 4, we'll jump into that. What's the difference between a 3 and a 4?
Need versus want.
No.
As I understand, 4s are normally something that takes a lot more planning, something more like a special project, something we have more time for and need more time for. It's nothing emergency. It's something low drag, downrange, maybe not necessarily so, but it's not the greatest priority and it needs lots more time, lots more resources, lots more planning,
Yeah, so this is it's gonna require you to kind of rewire your brain on this one, because we think priority 3, priority 4, it means it's less important. And that's actually not how we do these prioritizations. We do it based off of, remember the priority 3, corrective maintenance, I said existing and broke. Priority 4 does not currently exist and it's new, okay? So priority 3 is existing and broke. That's corrective maintenance, you're correcting. Enhancement is something that doesn't exist that you're trying to add. So install electrical outlet. Is that a priority 3 or priority 4? Just off those words. Priority 4. Nothing to do with the importance of that outlet. It has to do with the fact that it's new and as opposed to existing, and it's not broke because it doesn't even exist. So yeah, thanks. I appreciate everyone that answered. But yeah, you could have a very detailed, massive priority 3 project to repair, renovate, something like that. That's a priority 3. Priority 4 is new that doesn't currently exist. Priority 4A and 4B, same thing. It's based off of mission impact. And you'll be able to kind of practice these knowledge levels as a part of your homework. So during your homework, maybe use this flow chart to determine, first off, life, health, safety. Boom, priority 1, work your way down. And again, is it required to repair a broken asset? That's corrective maintenance. Is it a nice to have, something that doesn't already exist? Then something new, then it'll be a priority 4. And then as mentioned, basically anything that you can think of that requires a multi-craft effort, you can convert to a priority 2. But there's guidance and gosh, help me. What's the guidance? 10-2-10? Right. Yeah. Yeah. So the AFI 10-2-10, that'll explain what a troop training project requires. Wow, that was number 1. Cool. Preventive maintenance. You're gonna have a great hour-long lesson on this PM, but the bottom line is this is the highest priority of work, so it requires our attention. And the reason it's highest priority is because of that lowest life cycle cost. Look back to that house of asset management. And then the biggest thing is we're not expected to do preventive maintenance on everything. How much risk are we willing to take? We're taking risk on light bulbs going out. We're not just going to replace light bulbs that are on. So that's a basic example of PM, but even when it comes to we don't have enough manpower to accomplish all the PM, what's the most important? Do we prioritize it based off of the mission dependency of that building? Maybe we put more focus and attention on that metric, or are we prioritizing it based off of commander interest? Or are we prioritizing it based off of this cost benefit ratio? Maybe just anything that's a low cost, easy to replace. window shaker, you know, the HVAC units that you put in your windows. Maybe we're not doing PM on those because we have a stockyard of a couple hundred. So that's where you in the R&O section need to come in and say, hey, I'm going to collaborate with the shop and try and find that balance. And then I'm curious if anyone in the R&O section is in charge of PM balancing. So type in the chat if you've got that. Sergeant Watcher said the 911 caller doesn't tell the dispatcher what the priority of the call is. The dispatcher determines the priority based on what's going on with the call and what else is going on.
Somebody asked a question earlier about who determines priorities to the customer.
Oh, yeah. Customer, if you ask the customer what the priority is, they're going to say priority 1 or priority 3A every single time, I promise you. We always joked we had priority 0s, which doesn't exist. Priority 5s don't exist either. So is that based on MDI of various buildings? That's up to you. You are a leader. You get to decide how are you balancing your PM. And at the end of the day, as long as you can justify it with statistics, then you're on sound ground. Just don't do any crazy changes without consulting with the experts. Some of those experts we'll be learning from this week. And if you ever have any questions on how I should balance my PM schedule, then jump in there. Talk to Jason Schmitz. There's a Z at the end. He'll talk later, I promise. Yeah. Number 3, corrective maintenance. I kind of beat this one down. But the biggest thing is we have more things than we're ever going to be able, more requirements than we're ever going to be able to tackle. And as you and R&O, you need to prioritize those requirements, not just identify them. There's a lot of tools out there. NextGen, Excel, Tableau. We'll introduce you to a bunch of these as we go. Number 4, contract execution. Anyone been involved in a design review? And then I'll ask a second question, type in the chat. Have you identified something that was getting programmed that you realized, hey, that doesn't make sense. Let's change the design. So as you, yeah, not yet. Okay. So yeah, maybe the design reviews are catching everything. I don't know, or maybe the programmer is doing an awesome job. I am a master's degreed civil engineer. And I will tell you, if I had to create a design, there would be a lot of things wrong. So the reason we have these design reviews is because we have technicians, people out doing the maintenance, doing the corrective maintenance. They know what the problems are. They need to be brought to the table. And while this is an engineering flight responsibility, it's your responsibility to be involved in that communication piece. Okay, and then project closeout. There's some discussions, maybe we'll talk about it later this week about how we can make our builder data more accurate through project closeout. So that last process of the 5 key processes is that process and issues management. So this is talking about how things come, from a little youngling, tadpole of a service request and become a frog. That was a bad analogy, but how do things grow legs? Ooh, that was good. So this is kind of the different schedule meetings that we have. And has anyone been in charge of a WRRB, work request review board? Or maybe been the person clicking the slides or making the slides? Yes, yeah. So if you're a 3E6, chances are, if you haven't, you'll be involved in this meeting. Anyone in the shop's been to this meeting? We got a hand up. Does anyone want to open their mic? I can't see hands. Or was that just a hand to say, hey, I've done it? I've done it hand. Cool, thanks. So yeah, the biggest thing with this is not an ops meeting. This is not a feel good meeting. This is a decision meeting. This is the work request review board is a decision meeting that you're making that final decision. So everyone should be involved. Environmental, fire, safety, engineering, installation management. All right, we're gonna talk briefly on this. If we don't talk later on in the week about it, then we'll throw it in somewhere. But this is the 2 different ways to collect data within Builder. Those 2 different ways, facility condition assessment team, that's typically what we see. And that's, you've got people from the shops, they're pulled into R&O, and that's their, I don't want to say full-time job, but that's one of their jobs is to do condition assessments within Builder. And then you have the maintenance-based approach. So someone type in the chat if you do that approach, but basically what it is you put the onus on the shops. I'd like to hear what shops think about this too, if you're in the shop, but basically saying, hey, we are required to look at every single roof every year, the structure shop. Why are they not just having a piece of paper that says, hey, let's do a condition assessment and hand it to the R&O section to implement in the builder? Alarms, another example, right? We're checking every alarm. We're looking at smoke detectors. Why do we even inspect alarms within the condition assessment team? Why don't we do that when we're already out on the site? If you're curious about consulting on that stuff, I think it's makes a lot of sense as long as it's implemented correctly. So feel free to let us know. But that's two different ways of data collection. I'd recommend kind of a hybrid approach to accomplish this. But if you want to talk more, we can. And then there's 3 different ways to do condition assessments. This is kind of knowledge information. This might be something you want to reference during the exam, but basically we use color ratings. That's how Builder does it. So you got red, amber, and green, plus and minus, and that's how we do assessments. Kind of curious, does anyone want to give a reasoning why direct rating or a distress survey is well, we'll skip through it. I'll just tell you the answer. So direct rating, that's that color rating that we use within Builder. The benefits of that is it's a quicker assessment, but it's a lot more subjective because we're just giving it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8 different categories that it can fall in, and we're just saying it's one of those 8 categories, and that's it. So it's not as accurate, and it's much more subjective. That distress survey, if anyone's involved in paver, that's what they use for distress survey, and that's talking, you know, specific, giving it a specific number that's degrading over time. So that's kind of assessments pretty quick because I'm trying to get through I talked too long at the beginning, but it was good discussion. The R&O section, you might be like, oh, that's fun. You know, the playbook tells us exactly what we're supposed to be doing, but how do we accomplish that? And the answer, one of the answers is sub-activity working groups. We'll talk about that more next tomorrow. But basically, it's if you're involved in a sub-activity working group and you don't know what you should be talking about, just look at the ops engineering playbook, and that's the answer. So that's a great way to build an agenda, is just to look at the ops engineering playbook, and there's your answer for, you know, why don't we have an activity management playbook? The answers are already there, just not in a consolidated area. And at the end of the day, what are we trying to do? We're trying to invest our time and money, manpower as well, I'd add, in the right areas, because we're never going to run out of time. We're always going to have more. Yeah, speaking of time. But that's the result. So sub-activity working group, that's the how to accomplish those 5 basic processes. That's one way to get communication and leadership involved. And then lastly, you may be like, I'm new to R&O, or our R&O section is not robust. We've just got NextGen on board. How do we even begin this journey? You're in a great spot because you're taking this class. We have another class as well, activity management, management 417. But these are just 4 different bullets that I'd recommend to get started to improving your R&O section. First, activity management working groups, whether they're virtual, in person, that's something that gets overlooked easily, and it's a valuable asset tool that cannot be replaced. Number 2, supply R&O with talent and experience. So it's very easy to say at the shop level, say, hey, I am not happy with this person's performance. Let's put them in R&O. That's going to be hurting your unit, not for the next month, 6 months, year, however long they're there. That's going to hurt your unit for years to come after. Invest with talent and experience. Number 3, advertise your processes and educate key stakeholders. We see a lot of difficulty communicating. I'd say that's one of our biggest challenges, not in this fight, but just in general. And then finally, measure performance and set goals. Captain DePalmer talked about that as well. Performance, one of those principles. Let's stop setting goals on the oldest DSWs or the oldest work tasks in the queue. Let's set SMART goals, things that actually improve. And maybe we focus on the preventive maintenance piece or the corrective maintenance. Maybe we say, hey, one of our goals is to identify 10 internal requirements a month, something like that, just to see progress. And then you can measure your performance. Maybe you want to say your goal is to improve the condition index of the building or of the base by 1 point every year. So the overall base condition index, that's something super easy to track. And it's a great goal because it's a difficult goal, but you can definitely reach it. Any questions on this slide? Cool. So you may ask questions, and Sergeant Watchus, we're super fortunate to have him up here. He works at AFCEC, and he knows everyone that works at AFCEC. So reach out to me, Captain DePalmer, Hem. You have at least 3 points of contact now when it comes to things in the R&O field. So that's basically, chances are, if you have a good idea, Ferry, it's already been attempted or accomplished. So reach out to us first before you get too much ground, and we'll send you templates, we'll send you resources, we'll send you to the right resources. Let's think smarter, not harder. So that's the point of this slide, and you'll get more contact info later on. But hopefully I covered these at a minimum, these lesson objectives and SOBs. But are there any last minute questions? I appreciate everyone typing in the chat. I got one last very important question for you at the end of this. But while you're typing in the chat, most important question, because why not? What generation did Forrest Gump live in? Gen A. Anybody? Oh, I got a boo from the studio. All right, that's when the hook comes and pulls me off. We have a 5-minute break, so sorry for going 5 minutes longer, but continue to type in this chat because we're here all week.